We are good at grade 10s. We are going to look at the salaries and wages, and I'm going to work through the different definitions with you today so that you have a good understanding of the background that we need to cover. Okay, I'm just waiting for the computer to wake up. Right. Okay. Salaries and wages. Over here, there's 4 things that we're going to look at. We're going to look at the theory and the terminology that goes with it. Then we're going to look at salary scales. Then we're going to look at the salaries and wages journals themselves, and then how payment is done. All right. So the first thing that we're going to look at over here is the terminology. So salaries and wages are covered and or managed by a variety of different laws in South Africa. For instance, that the minimum wage in South Africa is 25 Rand per hour. This differs obviously in each country. There's a variety of terms that you need to understand, and that's what we're going to look at. First term that you need to understand is the term gross salary. Gross salary is the total reward that an administrator or clerk will get when they do clerical work for a period of a month, normally. Deductions are all costs payable by the employee that is subtracted on behalf of the employee by the employer. Net salaries is the amount of reward that would physically be paid to the employee after deductions were made. So that's the salary that your parents get paid into their bank accounts. Contributions is over and above your gross salary, things that the employer pays that increases the amount that the company must budget for. So if you combine those two, you get your cost to company. So cost to company is the total amount payable by the business to cover the salaries and or wages that includes contributions. We are now going to look at each one of these, or as many of these deductions as we can. The first very important one is SARS PAYE. So SARS PAYE is a form of progressive direct tax. So progressive means that the more you earn, the higher percentage you need to pay. Direct tax means that it's linked to an individual person, not an object, but a subject, so a human. All right? The rates at which the percentages are charged changes over the course of time. So it normally is, it changes at the beginning of each year, depending on what the Minister of Finance says. Okay? Unemployment Insurance Fund. Everybody that works, I think something like more than 20 hours a week must contribute, or employer must contribute to this. So it normally is 1% of the salary earned by the person. The employee needs to give and the employer needs to give respectively. And it changes from type of employment, but normally it is fixed after a specific amount. Okay. And the next term we're going to look at is medical aid. Medical aid is an organization that covers medical costs, so that that's obviously going to be more than what you have saved, and it covers things like illnesses and or hospitalization that can run up to millions. Pension fund is an organization that sets money aside for a person when they reach retirement age. SDL is a fund created by the state that the employers pay themselves. And this fund is then used to reskill previously disadvantaged people. And then you get staff funds. A staff fund covers expenses that staff themselves would create or have staff functions So if somebody is pregnant and you've got a stalk team, things like that, that covers the staff fund. Some organizations use this to buy sugar and tea and coffee and things like that. When you've got trade unions are organizations that aim to improve the standard of living of the employees, so that employers do not exploit with their power the rights of the employees. But over here, remember, it's a two-way street. So both parties need to keep in count that it can go south for either party. Then we've got gross wages. Now, gross wages is the amount of reward that is subjected to, that is normally projected or it's normally attributed to laborers. It's normally charged weekly or paid weekly. Can be done twice a month, depending on the type of activity. It's normally linked, it can be linked to a specific project that's being done. Gross wage will consist out of a normal wage and an overtime wage. Normal time wage or normal wage would normally consist out of 40 hours. So there is 8 hours in a day that you're supposed to work. For 5 days, that will give you 40 hours. And then the person's 40 hours is multiplied by a rate that they get paid. Overtime is normally linked to 1.5. And so it's all hours worked over and above the 40 hours. Okay. Overtime can also be applied for salaries, though it's less, it happens less, and it's much more of a negotiation. Well, any overtime is a negotiation. And that's it. That's the first terminologies that you need to know. I hope that that was informative. Have a good day. Okay, let's start.